Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indie Comics Explained. And yet again, I brought another fantastic guest. But before we bring him on, please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let everybody know we're here. And one more time, the Oswald Chronicles currently on Kickstarter. Go check it out. Fantastic artwork by none other than Aurelio Tillis. And this is If I Was a Few Inches Taller. And we have the first issue to the 100 Artist Project, which is in color, which you don't see much Oswald in color, but this is in color, so go check it out. Currently, I can start in the notes down below. And without further ado, let's bring in our guest. How you doing, James?
I'm doing just fine, JD. How are you?
I'm good, man. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is James Burton. I am a scattered comics creator out here in Sacramento, California. I am the father of two awesome kids. I am the husband of an awesome supportive wife, and I am lucky enough to survive level 4 cancer and be able to make comic books whenever I'm not sweating through the day job.
Nice, nice. And you're also the creator of two fantastic comics.
Yep, I'm the creator of both Damage Incorporated and the Ballad of Nod.
All right, nice, nice, nice. So let's get into. You're a writer?
I do everything on the books, whether it's the writing, the inking, the penciling, the lettering. That it doesn't really matter. Everything on the books are done by me.
Nice.
The only time I ever had help is I used to have a colorist help me with Damage ink, but I went over to black and white and gray tone just because it's more in what I wanted the book to look like. I'm colorblind, so I hate coloring books.
Gotcha. Nice, nice. Okay, yeah. I have a couple of friends who are colorblind as well. It's interesting to see them color.
Yeah, interesting is the word that gets used the most when I do it.
Uh-huh.
I actually drag my kids over and have them help me make the little color swatches,
Right.
so that I can see which things I need to pull from. But for some reason, green and red, they don't work with my eyes right. So either skin tones are too green or they're too red because I can't see them. I see them. I just see them at a much lesser quality than everybody else does.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, with my friend, I remember he did a banner, and it was all in purples and yellows. And we were like, we stood back and we were like, those are some really interesting color combinations. Like, it didn't look bad. It just looked weird.
Yeah.
Right?
That's but we don't know that. To us, it's us. This is what the world looks like.
Yeah.
And we have no way of communicating it, no way of describing it, no way of helping people understand it. And then they look at it and just think, you're so freaking weird. How do you not understand? Like I did a commission once for Carnage a long time ago. And I did what I thought was that orangey red that Carnage is. It was pink.
Gotcha.
And I had no ideas, but I made cotton candy Carnage.
How did the person at the commission feel about it? What they say?
Well, it was a friend of mine, so it's turned into, let's see here. He's been making fun of me about it for about 17 years.
Nice.
Brings it up every time I see him.
Yeah. That's kind of like with my friend too. We're just like, let's break out that banner. I want to see that again.
Yeah. I luckily I haven't seen that piece of artwork in a while to be embarrassed by it, but it exists, and I know it exists, and all I need to do is know that it exists to be embarrassed by it.
Right. Now, it's funny, that I understand, because it's just you got the color scheme wrong, which is a very famous character. In his case, it's not a thing to be embarrassed about. Like I said, it was just weird looking. It was just bizarre. I was just like, wow, that's funky, and that is weird. And then once I found out he was colorblind, I was like, oh, that's what that is. That it was just like, yeah. And I've met a couple of other people who are also colorblind. They prefer, like my books are grayscale, and then, but I like doing them in color eventually. But yeah, I found a lot of people like that. There's one artist, Mike Gracias.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I don't know personally, but I know of him.
Yeah, he's also colorblind, and and he tells me that he says they don't consider colorblind people when they make comics.
No, not even a little bit.
No.
Like, I'll give you an example. I'll show you one of Damage Inc., one of the books that I'm always creating. I basically am entering a Webtoons contest where they're doing a huge action contest. I just finished it literally this morning, and I had to color the entire thing because part of the contest means it has to be colored.
Okay.
I haven't colored a Damage book since issue 1, and I'm on issue 5. A lot of the issues are even like 30 to 60 pages. So, excuse me. So I don't do a lot of coloring, but let me show you here for a second. I'm going to share it, and I'll show you what it's looking like right now. Come on. Oh, I got to click that. Here we go. Alrighty. So here's an example. Now, remember, now I have my kids that are helping with the colors. So it's a little bit different now. So, like, for example, when I do reds, I usually choose the brightest red possible. Now the reds are more blood-like and more subdued because I've had them help me. They're like, no, Dad, everything can't look like a fire engine. And they basically explained to me that the reds I was choosing actually hurt to look at.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, on a really bright end.
Correct. And they said because all of my pages when I did them, I was using that same color. Like you'll see down here, you see there's a red symbol that goes on the back of every Damage Inc. member.
Right.
And because I had them all uniform, they said, "Oh, at least the book looks together, so there's nothing wrong with that." But it still hurts to look at. So this time I had my daughter basically kind of go over my color choices, and I think it helped. I mean, I can't tell if it helped, but
it looks fine.
Oh, that's good.
No, it looks fine, and my eyes don't hurt when I look at it.
Oh, yay! I'm grateful for that part. But I am really grateful that my daughter goes to the conventions with me. Her name is Camille. And when she's been helping me with things when pretty much ever since she was about 4 years old, she would go to the cons with me. She would color sketch cards and whatnot at the tables. And she loves being a part of the entire thing. She's actually upset at me because I haven't gone back to doing any conventions since the whole COVID thing.
Right.
Being a cancer survivor means I'm a little bit extra vulnerable. So I haven't started doing anything like that. Oh, there we go.
Very nice. Very nice. So in seeing that, like, let's start with this thing. Let's start with why did you choose Webtoons to do that project on?
I got approached a long time ago, actually, at one of the Sacramento cons by Tapas. And they started asking me to put a book I had called Inheritance. It was this very beautiful horror book up, and they wanted to see it on their website. But the creator that I created it with, my co-writer, his name was James Schumacher III.
Okay.
James was heavily invested in his film career and had started doing comics because he encountered problems inside of the film industry, different cutthroat things. I'll just leave it at that part. And then he wanted to make this comic called Inheritance. We both worked on the title, we both worked on the concept, and then he did the writing and I did all the artwork with me, helping him with story, him helping me with giving, like, being a quality assurance on my artwork, things like that. It was a beautiful book. The problem is that because he comes from another industry, he was one of the writers that wasn't able to understand the mechanics of comic books that are there for a reason.
Right.
Wanted to push the envelope on everything, and even on things that would create problems for the creator, for me, and not be able to make it out. He also got in arguments with our publishers who tried to educate him, and basically anybody who tried to tell him how things were meant to go and to be more successful, he didn't want to hear it. And it escalated, and eventually he and I couldn't work together anymore. But the experience with Tapas, I've always kept a watch on how things are going on Webtoons, how things are going on Tapas. I read several different books on there. And there isn't any quality control really on either website, so you don't know what you're going to get till you start reading it. But
Right.
sometimes you find some really beautiful gems on there.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was looking around a few months ago, I was probably about 14 pages into my new book, The Ballad of Nod, and doing really well. I was really excited to be making such good progress on it. But Webtoons put up this fantastic contest that literally a first prize is $50,000. And it's a combination of voting from the people at Webtoons and voting from the people reading the book.
Right.
And they're going to be taking votes in July, and they're kind of gathering up all the contestants right now to the end of the month. So when I heard that there was that much of a prize money at stake, and at the same point, I had in some troubles in my day job where I was working on my exit to
Mm-hmm.
leave the management job I was in and setting up my new management position. And there was going to be a gap. So I've
Right.
spent all this time, all the entire time I was down, I spent really hustling and trying to work for the Webtoons because I was like, dude, uh, winning a $50,000 contest is a $50,000 contest isn't something that it comes lightly. I mean,
Right.
that'd be let me be able to make books all year if
Mm-hmm.
I to pull that off. So the idea was that if I was able to do that, I could focus a little bit more. It's like it's not quite as awesome as having a gigantic Kickstarter with $50,000 in it, but
Right.
it's awesome in other different ways. You get Webtoons has millions of people in their audience. I know they're based in, you know, Korea and all the rest of the other stuff, and it's hard to eke into them. But
Right.
nothing wrong with taking a shot at it, and at the
Mm-hmm.
same time building another book on a property you own. So I took a shot.
All right, cool. Now, when you're like, we'll go a little bit into process now. Obviously, you're writing the stories. How are you breaking your stories down for yourself? Are you like got post-it notes? Are you writing out a full script? What are you working on?
Well, comes from a time in my life when it was basically my high school years.
Mm-hmm.
We moved into this tiny town I'm living in now, which is Lincoln, California. And my background, dude, was a mix of Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy. I'm not exaggerating. My dad was an outlaw meth cook. My mom was a hippie nurse. We lived in like 38 different houses by the time I was 14, getting kicked out of them or leaving because my brother and I made a catapult in the backyard to fling garbage at somebody, or my dad, like one time we had to leave a neighborhood because my dad had nailed a man to a tree with a crossbow.
Mm-hmm.
These are some examples. So
Mm-hmm.
um, when we got into Lincoln, all this crazy garbage passed that was I was still living in. I
Right.
started making friends with a group of guys that were into role playing games,
Mm-hmm.
and role playing games became like my main focus all the way through high school, pretty much. I
Right.
coasted at high school. I could get A's in any class, so I would put my energy into those games. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, it allowed me to look at things from a different point of view, learn a lot of different things about them, learn things about me. And the stories about Damage Inc. came from the fact that we created a story where everybody was basically a member of this club that would hunt down supervillains and hunt down monsters and get paid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Damage Inc. is. It's a club about that. So I have like 15 years of these stories in my head from all these games that we played repeatedly all the way through high school and the years after. So whenever it's time for me to start making more damaging stories, I basically have a little notebook where I keep different ideas from those stories. And then I sit down and in Google and write up an outline for the stories, decide how it's going to connect to the other ones, and then leave it into other stories as well. I write out the outline. Then once the outline is done, where I do a 3 chapter thing, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just start making moments in between them, and then the moments become pages, and I expand from there.
All right, cool. Now, how different is it working from like a standard panel to panel, page one, page two, as to working on like that infinite scroll thing that like
That
Tapa?
I'll be honest, it doesn't change script wise. for me, because I wrote the script for this the exact same. Actually, pardon me, I didn't write this script. I forgot to mention this. See, I have a friend. His name is Jeff Aragon, and he's pretty awesome. And he's always wanted to write comics.
Cool.
This is the second time he and I've done this together. He wrote one for an anthology book that I did a while ago, the Edgar Allan Poe Chronicles. I believe that was Dren Productions. We had a story in there where he wrote a story about damaging hunting down a mummy that would not shut up. Even they cut off his head and he was still yapping away. They couldn't stand him. Very funny. So I asked him to do another story, and this is what he came up with, which was goblins taking over a town and damaging Kevin to come in and rescue one of their friends that tried to stop him. So, and it's got, and I just ratcheted. All I did to the script is I ratcheted up the action and tried to make it as prolific as I could, so that it would contend inside the action category as strongly as possible. But the difference is, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the scrolling method, but that's because that I've always done pages. I've been doing the comic books since basically 2014, making print ones, selling them at cons and whatnot. So I'm pretty well entrenched in that methodology. When to do the page turns, when to do this, when to do that. The concept of the infinite scrolling means that you have to keep up people's attention spans and use the space very differently. I had to take the book that Jeff and I was working on and reorientate it and use all the gutters and do a bunch of different things to make everything make sense and do the eternal scroll. So it took some effort. It is definitely convertible, but I would recommend, if anybody is doing web style comics, that they start off making a script for that instead of trying to convert from books to the Webtoons.
Gotcha. Now, is that how you did it? You had it already as comic format, and then you just reformatted?
I had roughed the book when the contest started, so I was able to cut and paste my roughs. But once I was done, I realized from both the composition with visual storytelling as well as storytelling that I had to go back in and make some changes, add some things to make the story flow differently. All in all, the story that Jeff wrote was about 12 pages. But in all honesty, I ended up with about 20 pages worth of book inside of it because of the change to the scrolling method.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Okay. That's very interesting. Nice. So when is that debuting?
That is going to be functional on the website to see next week. Because I finished it today, it has to go through the process to get admitted into the website. And I've got the little icons to make for the comic. Once those are done, everybody will be able to see it. My goal is to have it ready and probably before the 20th. The contest itself begins on 31st. So everybody will be able to see it and look at it, but the due date is the 31st. That's when Webtoons closes it down for voting, and they vote with a combination of their own people and the people who see it.
All right, cool, nice. Now, I don't know if you know this, but do you have any idea of how many other contestants?
Right now they have 10 pages with like 60 to 70 contestants on each page. I mean, there's hundreds of contestants.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, well, for 60, let's say 60, 10 pages, at least 600 people.
At least I'm guessing that my estimate is extraordinarily low. This is international. This is millions of readers. There's a lot of contention, and I'm not afraid to be able to have my stuff compared to other people's. It is unique. My particular visual style is, how has it been described? Like on websites, it gets described as like anime influence, but very like horror dominant, that kind of stuff. Perfect for a zombie comic. I've done other zombie works for other people, but so it's not super clean. I don't do work like Jim Lee. I don't do work like that. My stuff leans in a more alternative direction. So I'm going to compete in with him, do the best that I can, and try to make the best impression possible.
Gotcha. Now, are you working traditional or are you working digital?
I went digital years ago. When we moved back to Lincoln, it was right after I had survived cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But the cost of surviving cancer basically put me in so much debt. I didn't know what a medical bankruptcy was.
Right.
I didn't know how to navigate those things. Plus, I was in the hospital trying to survive. So
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
a result of it, I did the best choices I could. But at the end of it, we lost like pretty much everything and ended up in this
Wow.
teeny little apartment. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we had 2 kids, 2 adults, plus teeny apartment, no
Right.
studio.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
since then, I've been working digitally on the Surface.
Oh, okay. And have you tried out a Cintiq versus a Surface, or like have you been able to like compare the differences?
The difference, the Cintiq, of course, is just beautiful in all of its different ways. It's a much bigger surface, and I
Mm-hmm.
would love to have the space for that. I have a house now, and it would be fantastic to have that set up. Um, I am working towards something like that, but one of the things that's important to me is that whatever I do with the comic, I wanted to invest in itself. I've
Mm-hmm.
never lost money on any book. I've always been able to make way more than I put into it. Part of it's because I do all the work.
Right.
Part of it's also just because when I go to conventions, I usually sell out. I bring 200
Mm.
books, 200 books are gone. I bring 100 books, 100 books are gone. Whatever
Nice.
ones I bring, I get either close to it or what I never end up losing at a convention. Very
Mm-hmm.
happy about that. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to take that same thought into everything I do. So I don't want to take a bunch of savings that are for the house in case the roof falls in or the
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, so that I can have something like a Cintiq with a $5,000 Alienware computer. I would love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I just tried to make do with what I have. I've handled a couple of things that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine has a Cintiq. He doesn't have the gigantic one, but he has, like a 15-inch UHD.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. They feel great. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to be able to work on them, but in my life, sometimes you got to do with what you got, and that's what I got.
No, no, I got you. I got you. Now the because my wife, she's an artist and she draws comics and she uses the Cintiq and she has one of the smaller ones. I think the 16 or 18-inch one. It's not the really big one. She was thinking about getting the really big one. Then she said no, it would just take up too much space. But she
It's,
loves using it.
it changes how you do a lot of things. I've got my son does animation.
Mm-hmm.
He's 12, and he has a Hyung tablet.
Mm-hmm.
I got him a 15-inch one for his birthday. I got it on sale, and he uses it. It does change everything about how you do. One of the benefits of my Surface is if I'm at work and I have a lunch break, I break out my Surface. I start working. If my kids are when they go to martial arts class, if I end up staying there, I break out my Surface and I try to get some work done. Any chance I have, I'm able to try to add to whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's shading, lining, roughing a project, whatever it is. I try to take every opportunity I can to build pages over time. It it's like this. A lot of us who are in indie comics, not all of us have the luxury of being able to do it full time, even though that is what we want.
Right.
And as a result, we have to use whatever time we can to make it work. Um, Neil Gaiman, for example, he wrote um,
That's Mike Jimmy. He's a friend of the show. Good morning, Mike Jimmy. He's
good
in Europe.
like
Yeah, he's in Europe, so he's the exact opposite of you. So he's like I think 6 or 8 hours ahead of us.
I I understand. We like I was talking Neil Gaiman, he wrote Coraline that way. He only did like 300 or 400 words on it a night over a year.
Right.
He didn't do what he normally did on some of the books like American Gods that were gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
He just worked on it as he could, and then in the end he made something absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I look at the books that I do, whether it's Damage Inc. or Ballad of Nod. I try to put the time in everything I can and make the time that I put into it as present as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's like that when I write the Oswald Chronicles. I write on the subway, to and from work. So, you know, and I'm writing by hand. And uh,
Oh, show me a page, man. Let's see it.
well, it's like this.
Yeah, that's where's
That,
the book?
that's it. It's all handwritten. You know. till I'm done with them.
Yes, my idea book and stuff does not look much different.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I keep telling people. I keep telling people is like, you know, they talk about how they have a rough time of writing. I said just write it, you know, long form by hand, and you'll find it's much easier. You know.
I think that everybody's a little bit different. Like I don't write longhand anymore. I write in outline form. My
Mm-hmm.
sister, who is a poet and she works with me on the Ballad of Nod, she's my she is both a co-writer and a contributor to it. Like, for example, we just did a bunch of work on Cthulhu versus Oz and Cthulhu versus Wonderland with Travis,
Mm-hmm.
and she would write poems that I would draw to and things like that.
Nice.
And in Nod, she contributes by editing the stuff that I've got because I've already written the first two issues before she started helping.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, she and I bounce ideas off of each other, and she's going to be going through my dialogue and tweaking it. But she writes long form, and she can't stand doing an outline.
Mm-hmm.
And she writes it literally like it's a novel.
Right.
And you can convert that stuff, but it takes a bunch of extra work. For comics specifically, just because of the way pages turn and the
Mm-hmm.
way you want to frame those pages in the mind of the reader, you need to use that outline form to your advantage as much as possible. At least that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough to mix the two different things, but it's totally possible. And writing's about writing however you're comfortable and as often as you can, whether it's in a little book like that, whether it's you got a what's it called, a Samsung Note and you're writing into Google with that little stylus, or
Mm-hmm.
whether you're talking into a tape recorder,
Yeah.
whichever way you need to write, you just got to write and get those stories out. The world needs as many good stories as possible. It doesn't always like to commercialize it, but the world's a better place when everybody's contributing things like that. I'd rather see that than some new version of a post-it.
This is true. Hold on. Mike Jimmy writes 5 a.m. in the morning. It's one of those days. And so,
Oh,
yeah. The point isn't to get a lot done. It's to get it done in the first place, a small bit at a time if needed. This is, yeah. That's it.
my sometimes I get the chance to work with Keith Carmona at Scatter Comics, and Keith is a teacher at a local high school.
Nice.
And once a year, he brings other creators in to talk to students. And I've gotten to go in there. My biggest piece of advice that I always give him is don't make it perfect, make
Mm-hmm.
it finished.
Right.
Because if you chase perfect, for the longest time for me, I had, like, right out of high school, pre-internet,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have ways of knowing how to get into comics, how to make comics, how to print comics. None of that crap. It wasn't as easy as sitting down on the computer for an hour. So I was trying to figure all that out, and I got the chance to take my stuff to a local creator that was published. He did Nova for Marvel and some Wonder Woman, a bunch of other stuff. I set it down in front of him, and I got tore apart. I'm not saying that I didn't deserve to get tore apart because my work was not at a professional level yet.
Mm-hmm.
How he did it was as unprofessional as possible, telling me to give up and put my pencil down, among other things. This guy was a dick. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't Neil Adams, was it?
No, it was not Neil Adams.
Okay, because Neil was famous for that. Neil was very famous for that. But in his defense, if Neil liked your work, if he saw you were ready, he will go out of his way to get you a job. Like he will literally call other publishers.
I can respect that. That's you got to have a thick skin to be a creator. When I went through that with this gentleman, my reaction, I didn't enjoy that experience.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, nobody ever does.
Yeah, exactly. So even though I was making stuff after that, I had hard trouble trying to submit things and figure that out for the longest time. So I would start things and not finish them.
Mm.
And then there was a day in particular where I really felt like crap. And I was staring at this page, this website that was basically the sign up for a local convention. And I was like, man, I've never tabled at a convention. I've always wanted to. And a friend of mine is already there doing some of her own stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and sign up. Now, when I did this, I did not have a table ready. I did not have a book printed. I had
Right.
nothing. I had a project I was working on, but I had nothing. And this was 3 months away. So in 3 months, I managed to get 2 books printed.
Nice.
And when I hit the con, I was so nervous. I was a wreck. I had done a bunch of research. My table setup was as smooth as I could make it. And I was told, hey, man, if you can sell 5 books that day, you know, then you're going to be just fine. Just keep coming back. It'll get better each time. And I got super nervous thinking about this. And I got up. I had to shake off the jitters. So I went out towards the bathroom and came back and sat down at my table. And they opened the con. About 10, 15 minutes after they opened the con, this 7-foot tall pirate, I'm not kidding, he was way over 6 feet tall, red hair, pirate's hat, the whole thing, walks up to my table. What's be this book about? And I, all right, sir. And I told him about Damage Inc. I said, it's about these friends who start a club and they're trying to make a profit by killing monsters and by killing superhumans and that are up for bounties. And they suck at it. And he laughed. Arr, arr, arr. And he picks it up and he's looking through it and then he reaches into his pocket and he slams down 5 gold pieces onto the table. This here be worth its weight in gold. I was that nervous. I was that much of a wreck. I'd waited years to do it. And the first time I sold a comic book, I sold it for pirate gold.
Nice.
Oh, such a great experience. Finish the book, dude, no matter what.
Mike says, "Ugh, we all have one of those in our lives." He's referring to that other gentleman. Did you run into me?
I don't know his name. I didn't get to know the pirate's name. I can be a little introverted and wrapped up in myself, so I didn't do the thing where you ask somebody who they are. I didn't ask him to break character, and he moved on. But he changed my life forever by doing that, man.
Nice.
Like when I go to the conventions and somebody's brave enough to buy an indie work and brave enough to put their money down on the table, that is a huge confidence booster. But it's a compliment in a way that I don't know how to even spell it out exactly. A lot of indie creators, they forget about that. They get upset because they're not selling 17,000 books in a month. Well, things have changed. Even the best guys don't sell 17,000 books in a month sometimes.
Yeah.
And just by getting a few books sold, that's a beginning not to take lightly. And meeting fans at that level is not something to take lightly either.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's people sometimes miss the fact that you're in a space and you're in rarefied air. Not everybody gets to produce a book.
No.
Not everybody gets a table at a convention. Not everybody gets to go out and do these things.
No.
How many people out there just have to give up because they have other things they're doing, in their life,
Yeah. It's a privilege to be able to do any of the things to work towards what you want to do and be. A lot of people always talk about your bootstraps and about making time. All that's true as well, but understanding the respect you have to have towards the people who are brave enough to buy your book in the first place is something that kind of gets forgotten.
Yeah. And especially for those people who come back.
Exactly.
Time and again. They come back. We were doing a show. Hold on with this. Mike says, my point where I went with this has something worth continuing was a buyer of my first comic and coming back to ask when the next would come around. That just blew me away.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hate saying I'm not done with the next one, but sometimes that's the answer you have to give people. But that's the point of a mailing list, so that they can see what you're doing, know how things are going, and support you the next time you hit Kickstarter. It's a pandemic thing. I think I've done 3 anthologies, and I've gotten 2 books finished and another one about to be done. None of that's other than the anthologies. The other ones aren't in print yet, just because things are so crazy getting stuff together to get them in print and getting them out to where people can buy them. Kickstarter has basically become the digital comic book shop that we all have access to.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, I don't know what year you started, but I started in '92.
I wish I started in 92. That was, I didn't start making books until 2014. I got out
Oh,
of high school at 96,
mhm.
and I was working in art college and stuff like that. But doing what I wanted to do I didn't really figure out what I needed to be doing until 2014. Before
Gotcha.
that, I was doing storyboards.
Yeah, no, I've been reading and involved in the industry since I was like 8. So, and I mean, and it was when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first came out. I saw an
Uh,
ad for it, and I was just like, if those guys can do it, I can do it.
yeah, that dude, I identify with that so much. I was
Hmm.
in junior high when somebody put down a Eastman Laird book in front of me,
Hmm.
and I don't, because I don't draw like Jim Lee, because I'm not Todd McFarlane. I was like, I can never do what I want to do. I got to figure something else out. And then
Right.
somebody put an Eastman Laird book in front of me, and I was like, what is this?
Hmm.
And I was like, you can draw quirky stuff and make books. I'd
Hmm.
never seen anything like that before. It
Yeah.
blew my mind away. And then like a year later, I found James O'Barr, and I
Hmm.
was like, oh sweet,
Yeah.
I found my people. And yeah, that is my aspiration, is to be in that category of creator.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Guy Davis's The Realm.
No.
No, you might want to look it up because I don't know if you know Guy Davis. He did a BPRD for a long time.
Oh, then I have some of this stuff.
Right. Okay. But if you look at his realm stuff, it's totally different. He hates the way this thing was drawn. Like he drew it, but he doesn't like the style that he used back then. It was a little bit anime. He used these paper clip noses. It, for me, it was incredible. I love everything he did on that. I'm waiting on Caliber Comics to reprint like just an omnibus and get everything in there. He did about 15 issues and he did 2 annuals. The issues are really good. The 2 annuals are the best stuff. If you
Awesome.
would if you were to pick up anything, you could probably go to like what is that, mycomicshop.com. The annuals are probably like $2 or $3 a pop. They're not
I'll,
expensive.
I'll try to find them, because those are the kinds of works that I love the most.
Yeah.
I like Sam Keith. Sam Keith is local Sacramento guy. I didn't know that. I actually met his mom, and it just, I like that type of work that is not that mainstream, that also blows your mind, that is artistic, that is storytelling, but it has a visceral feel to it.
Hmm.
And that's what I try to always include in everything that I do. Because of that, when I ran into that professional that I was mentioning before, when
Hmm.
I ran into him, his quote was, "You may as well put your pencil down. You are too non-commercial, and you are never going to be able to work in the industry as a result of it." In all honesty, if I'm being really honest about his work, he's a hack. And while his stuff got in print and he got paid for it, if I were, in all honesty, his stuff looked like every piece of garbage being hucked out of the late 90s, or
Right.
the not the late 90s, but the late 80s. He was a
Yeah.
house artist,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I
A
didn't
lot.
know that at the time. I didn't take that into context, and
Mhm.
I let it defeat me. So all those quirky artists that are out there thinking that they can't do stuff, well, you know what? Ronan Vasquez has done pretty damn good, and he made the weirdest, creepiest stuff before he made Invader Zim. So make what you love, and the rest of it will work out eventually.
This is true. I mean, there's both ends, right?
Yeah.
Because I love styles,
Hmm.
right? And you have, like you said, you got Sam Keith, you got Mike Mignola, you got guys like Guy Davis. Then you can push off, right? And you guys got like Chris Bacala,
Hmm.
right? A little bit more refined, but and then you got guys like Arthur Adams,
Yeah.
style, is in his thing. And then you can go back, you got guys like Tim Vigil,
Hmm.
who's a little bit more realistic, but it's like this weird style, you know?
Yeah. Style is a part of your voice.
Hmm.
And some guys find that medium where they give it up and make things clear.
Right.
Sometimes people can't do that. There's always a mix. But all the creatives inside the fields, they love seeing all of it.
Yep.
Like the one of the fantastic things about comic books is there's a book out there for everybody. If you
Mhm.
look long enough, you're going to find something you connect with, whether it's Bernie Wrightson or James O'Barr,
Mhm.
or somebody who is on the total opposite end of the stylistic field, and it's Jim Lee, Will Spatasio.
Right.
there's all kinds of different styles, and they're all supposed to be there because that's the way the world works. It's going to be a huge mix of all this fantastic creation, and without it, we'd all be reading the same book. And that was
Yeah, and that would suck.
yeah.
And then we would never encounter Richard Corbin.
No, we wouldn't encounter any of that awesome stuff.
Exactly. My non-commercial work is exactly what people are looking for because it's breaking the norm and people always want new things. So there you go. You want to talk about Ballad of Nod for a couple minutes?
Heck yeah, I love Ballad of Nod. You guys want to see some?
Sure, to me. Pull it.
Let me share. 1 second. All right. So Ballad of Nod has itself a little story. The Ballad of Nod is actually the result of part of it is me surviving that cancer. Now, the reason why I mention this is because when I got out, I went through the worst year imaginable. In that year, not only did I lose everything I was working towards, but I lost my grandfather, I lost my father, I lost my mother, I lost my other grandfather, and I lost my house. And all of this started literally just 2 to 3 weeks right after my daughter was born. Wow. So here we have is the color of the Ballad of Nod. You can see Camille's character right there. Her name is Faye. Now, as I was dealing with my grief and dealing with trying to figure out how I was going to explain, when you're trying to figure out what kind of a father you're going to be, the time to do that is probably not while you are steeped in grief and trying to understand the world in large. It's not going to be when you're trying to figure all of those things out in the first place. Gosh darn it. I'm having a little trouble. Let's skip over to some finished pages. So the story of Nod is about a little girl who's lost her father. Mm-hmm. And that part was taken directly from my life because it's crazy that I survived what I went through. Camille was given a teddy bear, as you can see him down there, by her mother. They begin every night when she goes to sleep. This bear is fighting all these demons that are trying to get to her from the dream world. And when she wakes up the next day, the teddy bear's all messed up. And so the mom is always fixing the teddy bear. That's why his name is Patches.
Right.
So the story is basically starting when she is having to make a decision after a demon drags him back into the teddy bear, back into the dream world. Once he's in the dream world, she has to decide if she's going to go save him or if she's going to stay in the world that she knows. That's where the story is going to begin. And it's going to go on for a number of pages or a number of books. The total number of script I have for it goes out to basically about 10 issues. I have the first 3 written, and the first one is almost done.
Cool. Are you planning on doing Kickstarter campaign?
It'll be inside of a Kickstarter, at least for the first 3 issues. And then we will see how it goes from there.
All right, cool. Do you have any idea when you're going to launch? Or
yes, I'm planning on launching the first issue for the Ballad of Nod, most likely by the end of September. I like to make sure the book is completely done beforehand. I don't like having issues with production because you never know how your life is going to go. So I try to finish the project first, then I bring it to Kickstarter, and try to take care of it that way. So the way I've done the first 2 issues of Damage Inc., and that part has worked really well, and I just want to continue doing it that way. I don't like doing it for the future ones just because of those factors. If I had the resource to have other people work with me, I don't even know if I'd want to do it. The Nod story is so personal that I want to make sure that my influence on it is felt in every single panel.
Gotcha. Do you have a pre-launch page up yet? Not yet. Okay.
So when I started the contest, I focused everything I had into it to be able to hit the deadline. I only had a month and a half to basically do an entire book and color it and letter it. So it's probably the fastest I've ever done a book, and I'm sure that I was focused on because of that hard deadline. I can't change that contest, but I can change my own plans. So I changed some things around and took a chance.
Cool. Nice. All right, James. Listen, we've been at this for a little. We're close to the end, but we're not there just yet. So do me a favor. I'm gonna ask you to let everybody know where they can find you and your work, and then I'm gonna ask you some goofy questions. So
Awesome.
Please,
love goofy questions.
You can find you and your work, sir.
All right. Easiest way to find me is on Instagram. I'm James Burton II. And my website is angrybrain-artworks.com. On there, you can find access to my newsletter. You can find out artwork and about progress on Ballad of Nod, as well as stores in which you can get a hold of Damage Inc. issues and things like that.
All right, cool. Nice. Okay. Now, I'm going to hit you up with my two basic questions. Two questions I always ask everybody.
Ask away.
First one is if you had any artist, living or dead, that you could get a cover from for your comic, who would you get? Don't worry about budget.
For the Ballad of Nod, it would be Sam Keith.
Nice.
Okay. And for Damage Inc., it would be James O'Barr.
All right. Cool. Nice. Okay. Good choices. I like those. Now, if you got the golden ticket, right, and they called you up to the big companies, ignoring all the advice of that terrible artist, and they invited you up, James, and they said, hey, man, what property, what IP would you want to work on? Doesn't matter which company, Image, Marvel, DC, Titan, doesn't matter. Who would you want to work on? Or would you want to?
When I was a kid, I would have said Spider-Man, like my whole life. Right. Just because of the influence McFarlane had on me and reading some other ones, or it would have been Incredible Hulk. I think now, though, gosh, what would it be now? Because that's a really good question. When you're doing indie work, at a certain part of you, like, lets go of thinking about that. Goodness gracious. If it was anything, I would love to... Gosh. That's such a good question. Wow. Hard to answer. I'd want to do something quirky that I think would do... Oh, goodness. I'd like to do... Gosh. Part of me wants to say I would love to do a comic book version of the Goonies.
Nice.
But that's like some weird... That answer doesn't really work all that well. Yeah, actually, no. I have the answer exactly what I want to do. I'd want to do Turtles.
Okay.
I'd want to do Turtles. I would love to take a crack at like some really quirky, weird Leatherhead and the Rat King story, and some version of their B-list villains. Right. I would love trying to take a crack at the Turtles. Now that I just thought of that, absolutely. I don't know what took me so long to answer it. It would absolutely be the Turtles.
All right, cool. Fair enough. I mean, nice. All right, cool. Now, I got some comparatives for you, right? So I'll softball. I'll ask you a couple of softballs, and then we'll work our way in. All right.
So, all righty.
I'll start with the two I ask everybody: Captain America or Batman?
Batman.
Okay. And some of these come with Y's, so you know.
Sure.
Godzilla or Gamera?
I like the positivity of all the little side characters in Gamera, but it's Godzilla, dude. Like it'd be Godzilla.
All right, that's fair. Kirk or Picard?
Picard.
Okay. Don Bluth or Chuck Jones?
Chuck Jones.
Okay. Right.
You gotta love the Wile E. Coyote. Come on.
No, of course. Here's one I like to test people with. Comic year 1986 or 1991.
91, because McFarlane was still drawing Spider-Man.
Okay.
And he
Fair.
just come off his run on the Hulk.
Yes. Twilight Zone or Outer Limits?
Outer Limits.
Okay. Nice. I like that. Um,
I could never get into Twilight Zone.
Harry Potter or Narnia?
Potter.
Okay.
When you read all of the Narnia series, I've read all of it. I love how it begins. I absolutely love the first 5 books, but as you get into it, eventually the entire thing just turns into this backdoor way of trying to get people to go to church.
True enough. Yeah, that's true. Pinhead or Freddy Krueger?
Krueger.
Wow.
Because Krueger 3 was the first Krueger I ever saw, and
Uh,
watching kids use their powers of their dreams to fight the boogeyman.
mhm.
That's kind of what happens in Nod, dude. So that's just a story that I cling to.
Gotcha. Um, hmm. Frank Miller or Alan Moore?
Miller.
Okay. Why?
I found Dark Knight and Watchmen at the same time.
Mhm.
Dark Knight is more in tune with how I prefer to tell stories, dispersions on women aside, because they both talk about. I don't like it when people. How do I phrase it? Heroes are something that you're supposed to aspire to.
Right.
They're not supposed to be overly humanized for a reason. If I want to see the real world, I can look out the window, I can turn on the news and be disgusted.
Mm,
That's where you find that stuff. I
right.
don't need anybody to show me that in a comic. I don't
Mm,
need Alan Moore to show it to me. I don't need any of the others. Whether their work is good or not, that's got nothing to do with my preference. Because Alan Moore is a fantastic writer, but
oh,
I don't like living in that headspace.
mhm.
Now, Miller, he's also in that direction, but he still leaves some core attributes of who the heroes are
Mhm.
and how they rise, and those things are still something to aspire to. A lot of people don't like the continuations of the Dark Knight and whatnot, but it allowed Superman to redeem himself. It allowed his progeny to find their own space. Why in the hell we don't have a book that has an Amazonian Kryptonian kicking
Mhm.
ass, taking names, and doing the right thing all the time? I don't know where that book is and why it hasn't been created, but damn it, it should be out there somewhere.
Yep. No. Fair enough. Byrne or Perez?
That's a harder question.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say Perez.
Okay.
I think his storytelling is a little bit more in my taste.
Mhm.
I really like the influence that he's had on other genres.
Right.
Like Byrne's got his own set as well, but my kids, you mentioned Teen Titans to them, and their ears perk up and they get excited. They're like they love the story about Trigon and Raven and that they haven't even read the books. That's just it filtered down through other media.
Mhm. Oh, very true. Um, Buffy or Supernatural?
I will say Supernatural
Mhm.
because while I love Buffy and I love the dialogue in Buffy a lot,
Mhm.
dude, girl's got some daddy issues with her relationships, and you can only watch so much of that without questioning what the hell is wrong with that character.
Mhm.
Supernatural daddy issues, absolutely, absolutely,
Mhm.
but it has a different effect. And
Yeah.
in all honesty, when at the end of the second season, when they finally kill the yellow-eyed demon, and their dad comes back from hell just to make sure that that guy goes down, that
Mhm.
was probably my favorite moment in that entire TV show. One of my favorite moments in all of TV.
All right. Cool. I like it. Nice. Um, H.P. Lovecraft or Poe?
H.P. Lovecraft. I'm a much bigger fan of pulp
Mhm.
than I am of poetic
Gothic,
horror.
right? Or Gothic horror.
Yeah, I like them both, but dude, I want to have some adventure mixed in,
Mm-hmm.
and you get some of that adventure in H.P. Lovecraft. At the end of it, you're absolutely scared out of your mind that if any of this is true, the world has no purpose. But
Mm-hmm.
try to ignore it and enjoy the adventure.
This is true. This is true. All right, cool. Secret Wars or Crisis on Infinite Earth?
You know what? Most of my life, I would have told you Secret Wars just because that's where the black suit Spider-Man came from. I would
Mm,
have said that my whole life until one of my buddies asked me how much DC I've read. And I said, well, I've read this, this, and this. And he goes, dude, you grew up being a Marvel guy. You never read Crisis, did you? And I said, no. Then he set Crisis down in front of me. Now, while I still swear to God, I don't like it when people knock the superheroes too far off their pedestals. There's a right way of doing it
mhm.
and the wrong way of doing it.
Right.
And the crap that goes down with Doc Light and all the hard choices all those superheroes made
Mm,
and Batman saying this ain't right and all that, it was really well done. And
mhm.
in all honesty, I don't think it's been done right since.
Okay. Fair enough. Um, hmm. Predator or Alien?
Predator. Actually, it'd be Predator for the most part until you get to that weird aliens story that was basically movie wise that one where it was basically like a D&D session where
Which
they
one
had
was?
the guy in the wheelchair. I'm trying to remember which aliens this was.
Oh, okay. What was that? The third one, or
Was it? I can't remember which one it was. It was the one where Sydney was a clone of
oh,
herself.
that's probably the fourth one. That's the one I think. What's it,
Yeah.
the guy who did Buffy? Is that the one?
I don't know if it was or not, but it's the only one I liked
Oh, okay. All right.
because it was like an adventuring group going through a module. Each guy was quirky. They all had weird weapons. I enjoyed that. Predator has a fighting mano a mano kind of thing for it. And growing up reading comics and the kind of guy that my dad was, like that rise to the fight is important to me.
Mm,
So that's kind of why I lean towards Predator. The only reason why I like that other one is it was really quirky and it didn't really even go with the rest of the movies. But I did enjoy watching the Predator when it came out when
mm.
I was a kid
Oh,
and seeing that for the first time. I loved Aliens versus Predator. I
mm.
I don't know. The stories are corny. I get that part, but the whole fighting mano a mano thing is just something that makes sense to me that I enjoy.
Yeah. Listen, I think the first Predator movie holds up very well. You know.
I I think it does really well because I've seen it recently and
Mm-hmm.
was kind of hoping it didn't fall apart. But what I was surprised by is when I watched Predators 2 and it wasn't as bad as I remembered it being.
Mm-hmm. With Predator number two, the with Danny Glover.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
was
enjoyed it. Yeah, I
I
watched
remember
it.
when he came out going, Danny Glover, what are you thinking? And then
Uh,
watching it, and then years later watching it again, go, you know what? That was actually a really good movie. I was too hard on Danny Glover.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I love the scene where the predators walk over with the guy's head.
Yeah,
It's just hilarious. All right, we've been at this for a little bit, so I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions and a couple more of these, and then we'll wrap it up. All right.
sounds good, JD.
All right. Doctor Strange or John Constantine?
Doctor Steve. That's a hard one. I think that depends on which mood you're in and which media you're consuming it in.
Mhm.
Like, I really like the Doctor Strange movies, but I love all the old artwork and how crazy and quirky that it used to get. Like, but at least Constantine's world makes more sense. So I probably have to lean towards Constantine.
Mhm.
Uh, just his place in Vertigo and how he slowly got accepted into the rest of DC and the rest of it begrudgingly. I
Mhm.
kind of love all that take. I like how he's a part of things like Justice League Dark, and I enjoy his position and all that. So,
All right. Cool. All right. Um. So what's up, Andrew? He says, "Yo."
hey, Andrew.
All right. The Rock or Stone Cold?
Ooh, man, The Rock does such good work on all so many things. If you'd asked me that back in like 97 or 99, I would have said The Rock. I would have said Stone Cold, just because he was always such an anti-hero, and that's what I love. But like when you look back on their entire careers now, I'd have to say The Rock. He's made a lot of really beautiful stuff outside of it, and he's made some really interesting things that I just enjoyed. I did not think I was going to like Jungle Story. I thought that was stupid, and I'm a huge Metallica fan. I missed the first 5 minutes. I wasn't able to watch it, so I come back in not even knowing Nothing Else Matters as a part of the movie because I'd never even seen a trailer. And then when it hits later on in the movie, I was like, "What the?" I was blown away. I love that movie.
All right, cool. All right, we'll wrap up with this one: Stan Lee or Jack Kirby?
Kirby.
Okay, why?
You got to respect all the stuff that Stan did. You do, but I am of the perspective that a lot of weight on the success of books has to do with the artist. The writer does create certain parts of the narrative. The writer does have the ability to keep people. Artist filters those ideas into something completely different. I've worked with several different writers on the different books, and it always comes out different than what they were thinking. Right. The end product that you actually see is that world through the artist's eyes, not the world through the writer's eyes. It's a partnership that's the way it's supposed to be. And Kirby kind of proved by going to the different companies, working with different designs, how his style could be used for a million different things and still make sense as that is a comic book universe. Stan Lee, when he tried to do other things outside of Marvel, they don't work. They haven't worked. They've never worked. When you look at the DC through Stan Lee's eyes, yeah, his characters are interesting, but they don't get made into other stuff.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with how awesome his ideas were and how groundbreaking they were and when he did them. But without an artist that was going to make that make sense to people, his books wouldn't have done what they did.
All right, true. James, this was awesome. Thank you so much. We made it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved answering these questions, man. That was a lot of fun. I haven't done that on a podcast before.
Oh yeah, I try to. This is like I said, I like asking all the goofy questions. Yeah. So thank you one more time, James. Thank you. One more time, please let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
All righty, guys. That's Instagram, James Burton II, and over on the interwebs, it's www.angrybrain-artworks.com. Thank you, everyone.
All right, cool. So once again, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, DeviantArt, all under JD Calderon. You can find me here usually on Sundays. Not this Sunday, but the following Sunday I'll be back. And I'll be on with the regular cast and some new people, and we'll have some fun. And we'll talk about comics, and I'll be talking to you all later. Thank you so much for being here. Go check out the Oswald Chronicles on Kickstarter in the show notes. Go check it out. And James's information is also in the show notes. So thank you so much, James. This was awesome, and I'll be talking to you soon, man. Thank you.
Thank you, JD.
You're welcome.